Hello, everybody, and welcome to In the Flow with Jessica Kay and Robin Wilt, your spiritual CFO. And today we are going to be talking about acceptance. So I know it has been kind of a wild ride, as a friend of mine and I would say, like, how's your week been? She's like, it's been a wild ride. And Robin and I were talking, and I feel like more and more we're being pushed towards acceptance. And interestingly enough, I was looking on Facebook today and another friend of mine posted, and he said, there's acceptance, he called it allowing. There's allowing, and then there's like, what's the word he used? Kind of like retracting. Like you're either pushing up against or you're allowing things to flow. And so it's either this kind of, we're either opening or we're contracting. And that made things really, really clear for me. It's like, well, I don't want to be contracting. So I guess I'm going to be opening and allowing to myself to move wherever the universe is taking me. And these issues around acceptance came up for me, and it was around safety. Like, I don't feel safe. I am fighting against something because I want to impose my will to protect myself. And that doesn't necessarily mean that it's always in my highest good or what's best for me in that moment. And I've also realized too, as I maintain my highest vibration and frequency, if I have the highest frequency in the room, then everything's going to move towards that. So these are all of the things that I have been playing around with in my current reality. How about you, Robin? What's going on? What are you experiencing and how are you working with it?
Yeah, so also the acceptance sauce has been sprinkled over my life lately. It's funny because I knew that I like on when my hardcore spiritual journey started, I knew that I had challenges with control. Um, but I hadn't really thought about how that tied into acceptance. But for me, it very much does. And I did some writing today, and what I realized is that, right, as spiritual beings, especially those of us there who are like very connected, what I realized is like the very first step for me to even get close to acceptance is I have to distinguish between reality versus what is going on, like in the spiritual or in my head, because I, in childhood, and then also like it's in my astrology with my north node is in my south node is in Pisces and my north node is in Virgo. So I'm very much like moving from that psychic, kind of just being in that world into being more in the practical. There have been a lot of tendencies in my life to, if I didn't like what was happening in the physical, that I would kind of, create like these fantasies in my head, or I would ignore what was actually happening. And for me, that has shown up a lot in relationships and partnerships. So it's been a bit challenging, but also like having really beautiful opportunities to set boundaries and to be really, um, I guess, like really frank with myself about what I desire and like what I'm going to put up with and what I'm going to allow into my life. So it hasn't been easy, but on it in a weird way, like it's been easier than I would have thought, which is also beautiful to see like how much I've grown over the last decade because 10 years ago I probably wouldn't have been able to get to that place and to set those boundaries for myself. And again, like I want to it's funny, I was chatting with a friend earlier, and she was like, I think sometimes when we think about acceptance, we think that we have to enjoy it or we have to like it. We have to get to the point where we like it, but that's not the case at all. Like you can accept something and still be annoyed by it. You can accept something and still really be pissed off by it or questioning the universe. Like, why is this happening? I mean, right, we want to get to the point where we are in that state of like allowing and opening, but also you're not going to get marked on your term paper because you didn't enjoy everything that was happening in your life, right? Like you have deaths in your family, you have relationships that fall apart, you have shitty things happen to you. Like you don't have to like all of them, but there is like I think there's a lot of freedom also in that acceptance. So yeah, that's kind of where I've been really since the new moon, which is so funny because well, I mean it's been longer than that, but things kind of blew up on the new moon. You know, that Cancer, we think like, oh, Cancer, new moon, like it's going to be so gentle, but depending on, you know, the placements in your chart, and then also you know, what you're working towards and what you're learning, it can be any activation can be challenging, you know, it's yeah. I love it. Sorry, just your feather like hanging above your head. It's almost
Oh,
like our guides are, yeah.
my turkey feather.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting. One, Cancer, family, ancestral, our home. So for me, none of that is ever like warm and fuzzy. And I've had interesting interactions with my family in the last week. So there was a lot of allowing. And I've been working with Robin. She's been doing some hypnotherapy with me, and that's been letting go of a lot of stuff. It's been helping me let go of a lot of things. And in hearing you talk and kind of sitting in this energy around allowance and acceptance, it made me realize, I recently spent the July 4th holiday with my family, and I was forced to shift my perspective and change how I interacted. So, when we let go, we're given opportunities to shift. And now in this current situation I'm having with my employment, where there's going to be some massive changes there, and I don't know what they are. This isn't the first time. I've changed jobs within where I work in my facility several times, and some of it was easy and some of it wasn't. But the words that kept coming to my mind was, there's going to be a certain level, like I'm going to have to allow, like there is always a choice. But if I want to maintain working at my facility, there is going to be some movement there. So I can either, be drug kicking and screaming into it, or I can just do it and be open to the level of choice. And I always, want to have as much choice as possible. But I think, for me, it's always like, okay, what are the layers? Like, because this is what's happening in the 3D reality, but that's not really what's happening. So it's like, what's really going on here? And for me, I feel like I'm being offered the opportunity to change how I respond, to see my own magic at play, and to also trust and have faith in the universe for where I'm moving. Because things are very mutable in general. Things can really change a lot. And I've realized too, for me, that especially in work, like in the work that I do, that can change very rapidly. So when I'm no longer needed somewhere, I'm moved someplace else. And I've kind of felt that moving through my being, like, oh, something's going to shift. So there is this level of trust that I will be exactly where I need to be for however long it is for me, because it's always about whatever lessons I need to learn, what I need to understand, what perspectives I need to shift. And when I lean into that, then things can shift quicker. Because it was resistance. That was the word. Allowance and resistance. My resistance just prolongs things. It prolongs the inevitable, but also prolongs me sitting in that space where I could actually be getting down to the work that needs to be done. And,
Yeah.
also not to bypass, like definitely feeling my emotions, because my body has been going through waves of constriction and pain, and, I can see all the patterns coming up. Oh, I'm stressed. So let's eat, let's distract, let's do all of these things. When really all I want to do is feel safe and feel better about the situation. So I'm also looking at that and saying, like I am being put in a stressful situation to see if I can shift how I respond, how I nurture myself. Because, I have a meeting coming up in a few days. So I have to hold myself for these days until I actually get more information and can move forward from that space. So it's like, well, do I want to be stressed out for the next 3 days, or do I want to allow and rest and take care of myself? Because right now there's no decision to be made. I have to get more information and see where the decision point is. So all of this stuff is kind of trickling in and allowing me to kind of float above a little bit and see things from a different perspective, have a little bit of that farsightedness, and be comfortable in my knowing that I'm going to be put exactly where I need to be placed. And in looking back, I can say that that was true. Every single job that I've been in is exactly where I needed to be for that time. And it actually wasn't so horrible. Like you said, allowing doesn't mean we have to be excited about it, but in the end, I actually enjoyed all of the jobs that I was in. So the biggest problem was me just being upset that I was placed there. So allowing definitely is really important. And I like the idea, maybe even more, of calling it allowing instead of accepting, because allowing is like, okay, fine, I'm going to let this happen. It doesn't feel so much like there's this layering of, I agree, I'm on board with, I'm going to allow it to happen. I'm going to reserve judgment. I'm going to take care of myself and show up to see what may transition or come about for myself.
Yeah, I love what you were saying about, which I've been spending a lot of time, not a lot, but like in the mornings, really allowing myself to feel the frustration and the annoyance that things aren't the way that I want them to be, and like doing some tapping around that and just really acknowledging like, hey, this sucks. It does. Like, yes, I understand that this is for my highest and best. Yes, I understand it will be fine, but also in this moment, it sucks. And I want to throw a temper tantrum and like, allowing all of that. So the other thing that, has really helped me like along this journey, and just something that I wasn't, oh, there's a little butterfly, of course I wasn't planning on it, the universe kind of presented this to me, but I've been doing a lot of work with the serenity prayer, because I think that's the other, like, we're not saying that that you just have to accept whatever situation is in your life, because sometimes it also takes that action where if you're like, okay, what is this? Like, is this something that I need to surrender to or to allow? Or is this something that is truly like not in alignment with what I desire for myself? Like, do I need to set a boundary? Do I need to walk away? Um, so that's also like really part of the conversation is like, yes, we get to surrender and to allow, but then there are also those things that it's not healthy, or it's not, it like, it's funny. I found myself with that like over the last couple of months. It's like, oh, well, the universe brought this to me. I'm just going to surrender to it. But the more that I felt into it, I was like, ooh, actually, this is one of those situations where it's not in alignment with like my core values of who I am as a person. Like, I need to set a boundary here. So, also allowing yourself that time to kind of go through the process. I know for me, I used to feel like I had to make a decision right away, or I had to like, like there was all this pressure to like decide and to have it be right. But I've really been leaning into, okay, let me just give myself the time and the space, and my decision might change from day to day. But overall, like kind of looking at it as, a bigger picture, like, okay, how does this feel? How does this continue to align with like what it is that I desire in life? Because like you said, right, like they could move you and you could pray about it, whatever, you could tune into your guides or whatever you do and realize like, oh, actually, it's time for me to leave, So again, we're not saying that like, you just have to put up with like everything that's happening in your life, because sometimes that is the lesson, especially for those of us who are sensitive, because right, we avoid putting boundaries in. We don't always speak our truth. We don't always, yeah, Allie is agreeing with us. um, so yeah, just that reminder I think is also important. I'm still here.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, for me, I realize that I want a decision right now. I'm very decisive, and that helps deal with any anxiety I may have around things, because I've made a decision, I'll just stick to it. Like, whatever, I've made this decision, but that doesn't always allow the best response. So one of the things that human design and Gene Keys has really helped me with is like, I am a responder. I respond to what's brought to me. And it's not always right away, when sometimes it's like not yet. And that's where I'm in this space of, I've been invited to a meeting to discuss how my role is going to change at work. Well, I have to go. So it's like, okay, I will be at that meeting, even, and as we know with work, when you're told to come to a meeting, it's not really an invite, but I still did. I was like, I'm working on this whole sacral response thing. So what does my body say to this meeting? And it's like, yes, I'm going. So there we go. I have decided, I have been given an invitation and I'm responding to it. And I need to now wait for more information to respond to. So that's where I'm like, okay, well, there's nothing to do between now and then. I need information to respond to, and there's nothing to respond to. And that has been like a lifesaver because I want to force a decision. I want to be like, this is what I'm going to do. And I'm sticking to it. And now I don't have to worry about it. And it doesn't matter how much bluster I need to come up with. I feel strong in that. So I'm like, but that hasn't worked out. And it doesn't really, it's more of a shadow frequency. It's not the highest frequency of, having empathy, having discernment, having farsightedness. So when I look at some of those higher keynotes for myself, I have strength, I have majesty in my being. And that is out of, having that higher frequency, not forcing things, not struggling. So I'm really on a very deep cellular level being challenged to choose the higher frequency when I'm met with a request or, when I'm met with a request or an invitation, where am I going to be at? And it's like, okay, well, in order to be in those highest frequencies, I need to take care of myself. I'm probably going to get off this call and take a lovely Epsom salt bath and go walk in nature and calm my nervous system. Because in the past, there's trauma that's all stirred up. Like, who knows what they're going to do? And this feeling of loss of control. And it's like, oh, my nervous system is asking for help. So I can respond to that. Like, yes, time for a weighted blanket, time for a little bit of rest, time for some healthy food, to help that nervous system feel safe. And when my nervous system feels safe and it's not responding to past trauma, but to the now moment, there's nothing wrong. Right now, there's nothing wrong. Everything is okay. I have a job, I have a house, I have my dogs, I have my husband, like everything is okay. Nothing has changed in this moment. So there's nothing for me to respond to other than the request of my body that's saying, we're remembering things in the past and it's making us scared. Like, oh, okay, I can take care of the body. That's simple. So when I get real clear about what's going on, there is no current threat. And I'm healing trauma. I'm engaging in regulation because my nervous system is dysregulated. So it is a little bit of a mental game, but it's almost like that's what's needed to help me move through and to respond to my body, allow my body's response in how we navigate these situations instead of living in the past.
Yeah, the other thing that has come up for me, like through this whole process of, and it's like it's a continual process, but I mean, during this iteration of it is like, I kept thinking, like, what have I done wrong? What have I not healed? What did I do that like got me in this situation? And I was actually listening to a Matt Kahn talk the other day, like a couple days ago, and he was like, that's still right. Like us thinking that we have so much control over something. It's like we don't. Like these situations are playing out because our higher self, our guides, our angels, the universe, whatever is like, right, helping us to learn these lessons that we decided we wanted to work on. So I think that was also helpful for me to realize like I haven't done anything wrong. It's not that I haven't healed enough. It's not that I fucked anything up. It just is, it just is this lesson that wants to come up in this moment. And how can I surrender gracefully and, honor what I'm feeling, but also like not put myself into this, like spiritual beat up around, well, why am I here? And because I think the other thing that's important to remember is like, we're probably not going to gain full understanding of a situation until we're out of it. It's just the way that we're wired. So we spend all this time like trying to figure out the lessons and trying to figure out what's happening. But we're probably not going to really understand it until, 6 months, 3 months down the road, or a year down the road, when we look back and we're like, oh, yes, it was that thing that I thought, but it was like so much more. Because even with this current situation, like I'm having, just all of these realizations around just my life and like the threads that have kind of tied together. And I'm sure that I'll continue to have that, as the healing, as the whatever it is, the activation, the karmic completion, because that's also a thing, where it's like we have maybe a karmic redebt to pay to someone or to something or to a place or a person or whatever. So, there's so much more at play than we realize. So, just letting yourself off the hook a little bit. And not in a way that you're not taking personal accountability, because again, there are those times where we need to make a decision. We need to be decisive. We need to set a boundary or to leave something, but also like it's probably bigger than you realize in a lot of ways. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think you hit the nail on the head, is it's not a punishment. And when I move my mind out of that and say, okay, I'm not being punished, I haven't done anything wrong, and be curious, like, okay, what opportunities can present themselves? Like, what are all of the things that can come out of this for the positive? How can my life move in a more positive direction? Then it's like, we go from, contraction. So what are the things that we are telling ourselves that's causing us to contract? And
Mm,
then how can we shift that to allow us to expand? And for me, that's like, okay, let's get curious. Let's explore what this could mean. Like, this could be like great. I could end up having an even better position and doing something I love even more. And it's new and shiny. And I have a tendency to get bored if I'm in a job for more than 2 or 3 years. I want something else to do. So change can be an opportunity, or these lessons are opportunities. And I love that. It's like, how can we reframe, shift our perspective in a way that will allow us to expand? And this just doesn't happen overnight. One, it can happen in conversations with others, but two, we have to take certain things off the table. So we're not being punished. We didn't do something wrong. We're not bad. All the things that we may have felt in the past, we're not, this is not safe. We're being attacked. Like, when we can remove all of the things that would cause us to shut down and even move to a place of stillness, to be able to look at it and just open. Like, for me, I love having people that I can call and say, this thing is going on. And what they do is they ask me interesting questions, or they give me, even like you said, Robin, like, is this maybe an area for you to engage in acceptance? And it's like, thank you. Like, my brain couldn't quite make that leap, but some more information, outside information, is like, yeah, I can think about it in that light. And that may either work or not, but like, give me, like, I want to engage and talk to people so they can give me other possibilities, so I can try that on. Like, does it feel like this? Does it feel like that? And just paying attention to that synchronicity, because literally this invitation happened. And then I was like, okay, universe, I need more information, because I want to shut down. I don't know how to respond. I don't want to respond how I did in the past. So please help me. And that's where I saw the post from my friend. Is it going to be, constriction or opening? I was like, and then I talked to you. You're allowing me to consider acceptance. So it's like, okay, I'm seeing a theme here. Okay, universe, like, I hear you. You're walking me down this path. Thank you for walking me out of the hole that I started to go down into. It's like, I took a few steps down into it, and now I'm okay with turning around and viewing something differently. So
yeah.
that's one of the most amazing things, is to be able to have good counsel, to have people around you. Because there's definitely a person I could call right now and be like, this is happening. And they'd be like, no, it's not. I can't believe they're doing that. And it's like, yeah, I don't need that right now.
Uh-huh.
I don't need that input. So that person is probably, I'm going to tell them, like, after I've been through the situation, oh, by the way, this is what's happening. Like, they're going to get the after evaluation. They're not going to be the person before, because I really need support. So for me, that was a big game changer when I realized why I was contacting people. Like, am I contacting people so they can help me get angry and upset
Mm,
and sit in there and be like, yeah, I'm gonna get them with you? Or am I contacting people to help me shift my perspective, to support me and allow me to grow and increase my frequency and to open? So that's another question. And when I started actually like looking into that, like before I hit the button of dialing that person, I was like, oh, I want a pity party right now. And sometimes I would, sometimes I wouldn't, but at least the self-awareness was there. Is like, what am I actually seeking? Oh, I want growth. I don't want, to stay stagnant.
yeah. So I think we're just naturally like kind of closing with some, things that you can, some tools, which, I think we tend to do anyway, but I'm just going to bring some intentionality there. Yeah, the other thing that I noticed was I had a lot of judgment for myself around this situation. And what I realized is some kind of similar to what you're talking to. Like, I knew that certain people in my life would also judge and like probably make the other person the bad guy or, whatever. And I was just like, that's not what I want. Like, I don't believe that. And that's not how I'm moving through life. Like, that's not how I operate. So I was like, let me connect with people who are also looking at this from, a higher spiritual perspective and like people who felt safe for me to share it with because I had maybe not a lot of judgment towards myself, but it was just such an abnormal situation for me that I've never been in before, and I never thought I would be in before. That I did have a little bit of like, why the fuck is this happening? Which actually I do want to share with you, like just very quickly. So a few times I shared this with Jessica before the call. A few times in my life, like really big things have happened in my life that I had previously judged. So, for instance, like I was always like uber, um, like OCD with my finances, right? Like I had, like a right and a wrong way I thought of like doing things. And I always judge people who filed for bankruptcy. Like it was this thing, like I just had this judgment towards people who like couldn't get their shit together financially. So then fast forward however many years, my ex-husband and we found out that the house that we had built, it was built on the wrong lot. So the only like after just years of like trying to figure it out, we ended up filing for bankruptcy. So I got to understand like, oh wow, like this is what this feels like. This is what leads you to making this decision in your life. Like I shouldn't say anybody, but I would imagine that most people are not like, oh, I'm going to file for bankruptcy, right? Like so that's just an example. There are other like big areas of my life where previously I held judgments, like very large judgments towards the action or towards a person that I have then gotten to embody and like understand on the other side. So um, I think also just doing whatever work comes up around that. Like I had to kind of go back and revisit like forgiveness, because I was like, oh shit, like I was really harsh on this person before, and a lot of it's like internal, but energetically, like it's still happening. So, as you find yourself going through these experiences, you might need to go back and like to me, forgiveness is like always the kind of go-to. It's like, all right, who else can I forgive that I was like judging very harshly, as it other people. So yeah, that's another tool that you kind of use is like, throwing some forgiveness in there. I had something else that came up, but I don't remember it now. Any other tips that you have, Jessica, around like how
Yeah.
to kind of move through this?
You mentioned a lot of good ones, and I think it's all about, even just coming back to that expanding and contracting with other people, with yourself, allowing people to be who they are and acknowledging that. And that's where boundaries can be. We can't change anybody but ourselves. And I realized kind of pulling my energy into me. Like when stuff happens, it's like, okay, I'm not going to shut down, but I am going to pull all of my energy into me so that I can really make the best decision for me. I don't want to get
Mm,
out there into other people's energy and messing around with that. I don't need to control anybody and instead just work with myself. And when I can
yeah,
pull that into me, I can gain the clarity about how I can move forward. I don't know how anybody else wants to move forward. I don't know what they want to do. But when I can pull that into it, then it's like there's this solidness when I can ground myself there's this solidness and knowing, and I get information. It's like I'm just constantly asking, universe, give me more information, help me understand, provide me with the skills that I need, and being open to that, because I'm moving more into a place of not knowing.
Mm.
If you ask me 6 months, I'd be like, yeah, I know the answer to this, and I know how to do this, and I can do that, and here's 5 things. But now I'm like, I don't know. Right now, what I do know is I feel constricted, I feel scared, I feel attacked, I feel like I'm being punished. Great. That was so much information. So each one of those, I am not being attacked, I am not being punished, and I am safe. Like, so I can address those core things, and then I say, give me information. How can I move forward? Well, the information I needed in this specific instance was allowing and accepting. And with something else, like you said, it could be setting a boundary. Maybe I am feeling aversion to somebody, and that means I need to not be engaging it. So just because something comes up, we don't necessarily know how to respond. And that's where, for me, I kind of retreat back, pull in my energy and say, do I need to set a boundary? Is there a deeper trauma going on here that I need to address? Is there something completely different that's going on? And when I am open to receiving the information, then I can make a decision. But the days of those quick decisions, I was very decisive and I moved forward, and it didn't have to be as hard as I made it. So just saying, okay, I'm going to take a breather and gain some wisdom and some counsel on how to move forward, and allow the universe to bring those synchronicities into my life. And that's that unknowing. That's that humility of, I don't always know the answer, but I'm open to hearing it. And, it used to be like 3 times. I heard it the third time. I'm like, now it's like a couple times, or even
Same.
the first time. I'm like, what does my sacral response say to that? That's a yes. Okay. So that is
Yeah.
to me, I probably saw 100 posts on Facebook today, and one was like, ding, ding, ding. This is the one. It was 3 sentences. It was exactly what I needed. So
Yeah.
just being open to doing things differently and using that to increase your capacity. Because we have been in spirituality for decades. Great. And we're still in the body. So there's still work to do. So let's be open for new ways to doing that, and new ways of moving through and learning these lessons. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my takeaway of, like, I don't know. Every situation is different. Every person is different. And in that moment, the most important thing is that wisdom for that specific thing, to call
Yeah.
on that and move forward in that.
Yeah. So I'm going to end like my piece on this. Like I think the other thing that has been helpful for me is to like come back to what's important to me, right? Like, what are my core values? What are the things that I desire in life? And like, if this situation is not in alignment with that, then that probably means it's something that I need to use my discernment and to either leave or set a boundary. So, um, yeah, like I would imagine that we're probably going to work on similar themes like this throughout our lives, because it is hard, right? Like we think we have so much free will, and like we want this freedom and we don't want to be told what to do, but we live in a universe that is constantly having things happen in our lives and things that we don't like. So yeah.
Well, and I love that. And as we wrap up, I think that there always is a choice. So that, for me, when I feel like I don't have a choice, I get angry, I get upset, I get reactionary. But when I look back, like, there is a choice. There may not be a lot of good choices, but there is choice. And when I can remind myself, like, oh, okay, I can choose to, I can stay in this job. I can, they're going to move me. I can quit, but all of those are choices. I may not like the consequences of those choices, but all of them are choices.
Yeah.
So even reminding ourselves of the choice that we have allows us to not feel trapped. And, we're in 3D reality. There's not a whole lot of easy, good choices. But like you said, if we allow, something positive can come out of it. We can transmute that situation into something positive. And instead of fighting it, like, that's my thing, is like, how can I look for that? How can I find that highest frequency and that positive outcome in the choices? And, I'm going to choose this one. So how can I have that work out the best for me? And like you said too, our soul plans these things. We don't remember it, but our soul plans these things. And if we can just sit into our being and really move from that place of knowing, then we don't have to understand everything with our mind, but we can feel that resonance. So
Yeah.
just allowing ourselves to reframe it and not feel so imprisoned by stuff that happens around us, because it shuts us down, and we're very, very powerful beings. We can manifest some beautiful things. So
Yeah.
just remembering that we have that power inside of us, and being there with that.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you all for joining us today. You know where to find us, Spiritual CFO, The Heart of Jessica, on all of, the platforms. You're on TikTok too, right?
Nope, no
No,
TikTok
no,
for
you're
me.
not. I didn't think so. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Jessica is on Instagram, Facebook,
And
correct?
YouTube.
Yes. And YouTube. Yeah. So, and obviously our podcast. So if y'all have questions or topics that you want us to chat about, please reach out. As you can tell, we love chatting about these things, and it's usually mirroring what is happening in the collective and in our own lives. So I feel like I always gain new insights when y'all allow us to share with you. So thank you. You can like, subscribe, share with your friends. Just get us out there into the world. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Anything else, Jessica?
Nope, I was just gonna say thank you to everyone, and we'll see you next time.
I can see the stars align, dance around the moon every night. And now my eyes are open wide, and the sky has never looked so bright. And I don't need to see the road to believe, to believe.